Mike, check. Justin Hunt. It's all happening. Thank you to everybody rocking with the channel. Thank you to everybody subscribed to the channel, who shared a video, shared a link. It's priceless. Big thank you to everyone who's donated. If you'd like to donate, hit the Cash App. That's right up there. Or hit the link in the description. Thank you to everybody for the support. I've had a very busy weekend. Happy to be back on a Monday. We're doing Culture United Live on Thursday with the Recording Academy at the Grammy Museum, downtown Los Angeles. I'll post link to tickets on my story today. We had a little slight change in the lineup, so that's one of the reasons why I haven't all the way posted about it yet. But I will do that so today. But we had a really big story today, and this is coming from GQ. GQ spoke to Clipse. Malice and Pusha T. 1 second applause. Love Malice, love Pusha T. No Malice. Whatever name he's going by, both of them are crazy. And very revealing conversation, I think, about overall. It really talks about them reuniting, of course. They're putting out their first project since, I guess, till the casket dropped, technically. Hell Hath No Fury, to me, is one of my favorite albums of all time. I think that's a straight-up classic. But their new project, Let God Sort 'Em Out, is right around the corner. And they talk about some of the challenges that they've had with this particular project. Now, the big headline around this is that Def Jam was initially supposed to put the album out. They agreed to put it out. And there's a Kendrick Lamar feature on the album. The song is called Whips and Chains. Now, chains and whips. Whips and chains, chains and whips. One of the two. It's funny, like if you invert those, it's almost like two totally different energies. 1 second applause. And so we talked about this on this channel. We talked about this on this channel here. And from what we knew about the song, right? And one of the things I talked about in the video that I did whenever this story first started traveling, I don't know if it was the end of last year or the beginning of this year, was that there weren't any overt shots at Drake on it, but I said it would live in think peace territory. I said the song would live in think peace territory for Kendrick's verse. Well, it turns out that that verse, according to Pusha T, was not something Def Jam / UMG wanted to be on this album. And they talk about it in detail about what sort of transpired with this. So we're going to go through this article. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to go through this point to the end. And, you know, there's some other things in here about Ye, so some things in here about the two brothers coming back together. So this still gives you a sense for what this piece is about. But again, this is with GQ. It was written by Fraser Thorpe. Great piece by Fraser. And so we're going to take a look at it. Before I do, big shout out to my brother, Rude Jude. Rude Jude, a lot of you know me from the All Out show with Rude Jude on Shade 45 for, man, almost 10 years probably I was on there with him. And I was doing the breakdown, the hip hop news on the show. I think a lot of people who might have listened to that show, All Out show, the breakdown conversation segment on what was happening in hip hop is a lot like this. It's a lot like, you know, a lot of these news videos that I'll drop. So big shout out to my brother, Rude Jude. He gave me a shirt. He's actually pushing merchandise. He's got a really dope line. It's called Saved by God's Grace, TFIG. TFIG. Now, I'm not sure if they're available yet. He sent me one. I'm going to hit him up today to see if there's a link I can direct people to. But this shirt comes courtesy of Rude Jude, Saved by God's Grace, man. 1 second applause to Rude Jude. And I can't imagine my career without him. Rude Jude was such a needed and noted support system for me in life and in the music industry and in journalism. He's a really great friend. And to me, in my life, he's one of those people where 90% of the topics that might come up in the world, maybe that's too much, when it comes to major topics, we are 180 degrees away from each other. And we've never let our views on certain things take away from the love that we have for each other. So I'm a big fan of Rude Jude. That's my man right there. Check out his new line, Saved by God's Grace. All right, so we're jumping in. So this is where they talk about what happened with this album and Def Jam. All right, so here's it goes. Still, now this piece is written in a profile editorial narrative sort of way. So we're just gonna read through it. This is Frazier. Still, it wouldn't be a Clipse album without some label woes nearly derailing the fun even after the product was cooked to purity. The duo's lore, of course, marked by the label politics that delayed a quick follow-up to their debut album, Lord Willin', forcing them to dominate the mixtape circuit with their seminal We Got It For Cheap series. Fire series. 1 second, block. While crafting Hell Hath No Fury with a chip on their shoulder. We got it for cheap. I love Hell Hath No Fury. You ever heard this album? Put yourself in the face. 1 second applause. What happened with Let God Sort 'Em Out is less dramatic, but it's a situation with massive reverberations nonetheless. If you expected the album last summer, the brothers sympathized. So did they. Pusha says they felt confident, proud, and assured of themselves when they presented the music to Def Jam. The label loved what they heard, except for Kendrick Lamar's guest verse on the thunderous Chains and Whips. Chains and Whips, that's what it is. 1 second applause. The final version of the song that Pharrell teased at his first LV runway show, and the song Pusha says was the first to come out of their sessions. Now, again, we talked about this. You know, there is video of this song being teased during the Pharrell runway show, which they just mentioned here. We've also shown videos and pictures of Clipse in Def Jam's offices, right? And so when I talked about this project, or this song rather, everybody seemed really excited about it, right? From the Clipse side of it to Def Jam side of it. And I didn't talk to Clipse directly, but I talked to a number of people who are around this, to be honest. And so what you're about to hear next really caught me off guard. So it says, don't be fooled by Pusha's interviews appealing for one last guest verse and the Twitter jokes that he went to a GNX tour day to physically walk Kendrick into the nearest studio. K-Dot's verse homework has been turned in for a while now. That was a narrative. That really was a narrative. It was like, Pusha T's over here talking about he's just waiting on one final verse. And for the longest time, we thought that was Kendrick. But after a summer of beef between their two biggest artists that resulted in a still ongoing lawsuit from Drake, Def Jam's parent company, UMG, blanched at the antagonistic optics of two of Drake's biggest enemies linking up on wax. Pusha calls their apprehension stupid, primarily because none of the bars in Kendrick's otherwise excellent verse could really be perceived as a shot or even subliminal. It does, however, contain the stellar line, "Therapy taught me how to open up. It also showed me how not to give an F." Now, that's what I think. That is what I think. Now, I am shocked to hear this. I'm legitimately shocked to hear this because if there's the optics of them teaming up, I guess, but this battle had a whole rap of Avengers. And so it's like, maybe it's just the level that Pusha T went to on Story of Adidon, which just had its 7-year anniversary, I think. 1 second applause to Story of Adidon. But if that's what it is, like just because it's them two and they're gonna try to take that song off the album, that's just crazy to me. There is a whole rap Avengers again, so is Universal apprehensive to have anybody, whether that's A$AP Rocky, Kendrick, The Weeknd, Future, Metro Boomin, I guess they made up. Drake paid him $1 million. But all these people on this label, they don't want collaboration anymore because of Drake and this lawsuit and the optics. Are we already seeing reverberations of this lawsuit?
Tomato.
That's crazy. That is crazy. That's crazy to me. Crazy to me. Especially since the verse, Kendrick isn't talking about Drake on the verse, and neither is Pusha T. Neither is Pusha T. Now, to me, again, all of this sounds really wild. Particularly considering Kendrick is on tour performing all the songs. He's doing all the songs. He's doing all the ones that are at least showing up in lawsuits. Well, I don't want to say all of them. He's doing Euphoria and he's doing Not Like Us. He's doing GNX with all the subs all over it. I don't know. I honestly feel like there's more to this story. I'll be straight up. I think there's more here, and perhaps we'll learn more in the future. But for this to be the reason why Def Jam doesn't have this album, because they're apprehensive about Pusha and Kendrick teaming up on a song they heard. It sounds like they heard this song that doesn't even talk about Drake or include Drake. And they're willing to give up the whole Clipse, a seminal Clipse project. This is a pretty slow year in rap music, all things considered. You mean you have a feature album coming with with the biggest artists in the world, and they're all who's on your label, and you pass it up? This doesn't read to me. It doesn't read to me. I feel like there's more here. I honestly feel like there's more going on than however this is being presented. I'm not calling Pusha and Malice liars. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I just can't see it that way. I just can't see it that way. But it continues. Pusha can barely contain his disgust recounting how the stalemate with Def Jam played out. They wanted me to ask Kendrick to censor his verse, which of course I was never going to do, he explains. And then they wanted me to take the record off. And so after a month of not doing it, Steve Gawley, the lawyer over there, was like, we'll just drop the Clipse. But that can't work because I'm still there as a solo artist. But if you let us all go, sure enough, Def Jam eventually agreed to release Clipse and drop Pusha as a solo artist, freeing the duo up to shop for a new home with a finished Clipse album and plenty more music in their pockets. So according to this, Steve Gawley and Def Jam not only dropped Clipse, but also Pusha T. According to this, because of Pusha T, or drop Pusha T also because of Drake, because there's a Kendrick song on it that even though it doesn't talk about Drake, and Pusha isn't talking about Drake, they were willing to let the whole thing go. This is crazy. I think there's got to be more details. I think there might be some other things happening in the negotiation around with this, because there's nothing that I've seen from UMG that would tell me they would go to this extent to avoid conflict or potential legal scenario regarding Drake, if that's the reason why, because Kendrick's on the song. I just can't see it. I think there's got to be more things that are happening here. That's just my read on this. This is very detailed, though. Pusha's talking about, what do they say? Pusha can barely contain his disgust? That's wild. I feel like there's got to be something more going on. We'll see how this story turns out, or if there's more information that comes up later. But I don't know. We cover this Drake case every time there's a new filing. We go through the whole filing. Okay, the positioning of UMG in these filings, to me, doesn't give me the opinion that they wouldn't like these optics. I mean, UMG, we saw Sir Lucian Grange high-fiving Dr. Dre at the Grammys. When Dot picked up Record of the Year and Song of the Year, we watched him at the Super Bowl. And all of this was before that, presumably, right? Because we're talking, they said they've had this since last summer. If you have this since last summer, right? July 24th is an important date in the legal documents, for example. They say that's the date that Drake let UMG know, particularly that Not Like Us, from their perspective, was defamatory. And that's when they had their first meeting, and Drake's team told UMG about what happened at his house and what people are saying, and they tried to get essentially an injunction put on the song without a legal injunction. He tried to get UMG to stop promoting the song. And UMG was like, nah, everybody, license it. Here it is right here. Triumphant victory song, Not Like Us. Here's licensing. Hey, we got the Grammys coming up. We're going to go advertise like crazy. Oh, every record that's broken, we're going to advertise like crazy. All this stuff. Oh, we got the Super Bowl coming. We're going to advertise all things Kendrick Lamar. Right. After July 24th. Doing all of that and then saying, oh, we got this Clipse album. Can we take Kendrick off of it because the optics will look bad? I mean, they knew what they were going through. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like there's more details that are missing from this situation because just thinking about this from the standpoint of all of UMG's other activities, all of their other movements, this was the line too far. Oh, we can't have Kendrick and Pusha be friends on the same album. That's going too far. Lucien and Dr. Dre high-five it. the song at the center of a lawsuit over defamation at the Grammys. That's fine. Okay. But we can't put out this unrelated song with two people who also had two of a dozen people, 90% of which are also on that label, who had a problem with this one person. I think there's more. I think there's more to this story. There's definitely more to this story. All right, back to the article. I just don't see it this way. Sure enough, Def Jam eventually agreed to release the Clipse and drop Pusha as a solo artist, freeing the duo up to shop for a new home with a finished Clipse album and plenty more music in their pockets. Ultimately, Pusha says the endeavor was gratifying. It felt good to even see how other labels were buying for the project. Maybe that's supposed to say vying. It says buying. Buying for the project or vying? I think it means vying for the project. Now, as they teased last week with a picture in front of the label's plain insignia, they've ended up at Jay-Z's Rock Nation. Oh, Rock Nation, always right there at the nexus of all the intersection of all the challenges and strife. Oh, Rock Nation. One second applause to Rock Nation. I think it's actually a good place for them. I mean, it's interesting. I wonder if this is because I think Rock Nation, if I'm not mistaken, they don't do label services. I don't even know if they do it anymore. For the most part, I think they're just doing distribution. Now, I'm sure Clipse and Pharrell and Pusha and Malice got some special deal, but, so perhaps there's not even that many artists on the label they have to focus on, so they can put all their energy into it at the same time, which I think is a really great situation. But, I think Rock Nation primarily is doing distribution for the most part. They've ended up at Jay-Z's Rock Nation where they feel supported and energized. I think that synergy, just in a rap sense, is going to speak volumes, Pusha says of the partnership. So if they're now officially doing business with The Rock and the Kendrick verse was never the feature Pusha kept alluding to holding out for, does this mean we're due for another Pusha and Jay-Z collaboration? Pusha's already gotten a latter career best from Jay-Z. One can only imagine how hard Jigga would go for the first true Blue Clipse collab. We made history a couple of times, Pusha says, with a coy smirk, referring to the two elusive Jay features he's nabbed in the past. I feel like being in business is a bigger link up than any verse. I'd agree with that too. Now, what was the song? He was on, Pusha T's last solo album was phenomenal. It was my album of the year. I guess that's 2000 and, is that 22? Feels like maybe 22. That was, oh my God. It's Almost Dry. Oh my God. 1 second applause. Incredible project. And Jay-Z's on that project, so I know they're talking about at least one of those collaborations. But on the business side, it makes sense. I mean, you got Pharrell, Jay-Z go way back, Clipse, Pusha, Hove go way back. It's not going to be a Def Jam. I guess two former Def Jam priorities teamed up at the other venture. Asked if Jay made his patented screw face when he heard the new music, Pusha replies, "Yeah, but you got that on camera already," referring to a crowd shots of Jay reacting to Chains and Whips during the LV show. Ironically, if anybody deserves a speeding ticket for antagonizing other rappers on Chains, it's Pusha, whose verse is not so thinly veiled response to veteran Dipset rapper Jim Jones going on something of a what's the big deal about Pusha T tour during a run of interviews debating the top 50 MCs of all time. I personally never understood what the interviews were about, Pusha said, or why my name kept coming up. It's one of the one thing to keep saying I'm not a top 50 MC, but it's another thing for you not to say that you yourself are one. No one asked me about a top 50 nothing. After about the third interview, I promise you, I said, man, he must really want me to know what he thinks about me. And that's how my verse came. This is what I really think about him. This is what I really think about him. Every line is true. It's my true heart. Now, these interviews they're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, this started off with Jinx from Complex. I'm not sure if he's still with Complex, but he was with Complex for a while. Trent Clark, editor at TMZ Hip Hop, and Jim Jones. That's the first time I remember seeing it. And Jinx was asking Trent and Jim Jones who were the top 50 MCs, and they were going through names, and then they said Pusha T. And both Trent and Jim Jones were like disrespectful about him not being in the top 50. Now, whether he is or not, that's up for debate. You know what I mean? 50 MCs is, in 50 years, there's a lot of MCs to go through. A lot of MCs to go through. I'm not sure if I would have Pusha T in the top 50, but that was like, they were so bombastic about Pusha T not being in the top 50. And then Jim Jones carried it on. Now, I'm not sure if Jim Jones carried it on as much as that clip went so viral that it was asked so many times, like in interviews and press runs following that conversation. Maybe he just didn't pull his punches, but the level of disrespect Trent and Jim Jones had for the idea that Pusha T was in the top 50. 1 second applause. Because it was funny. 1 second applause. It was funny. You know what I mean? So, but that song's not even about Drake. Again, another example of how that song's not even about Drake. Either way. Listen closely elsewhere in the album and you'll find at least one other instance of Pusha letting another rapper know what he really thinks about them, sounding as menacing yet unbothered as ever. I asked Malice, who doesn't appear to have any personal problems with anyone, what's going through his mind when he sees his younger brother get into demon mode like this? He's being true to himself, Malice says, uncorking the heartiest chuckle he's let out all day. This is who I knew him to be growing up, and it gets worse. Okay. Now, I think this is the only thing they really say about this project moving from Def Jam to Roc Nation. Again, I think that there's just other stuff that's also at play. I'm not saying this didn't happen. I'm saying that from where I'm sitting, I just can't see this being the only reason. maybe, sure, these things happen. I'm not trying to say that they're not telling the truth, of course, but that just looks so wild to me, given everything else that we know about UMG and how they've moved since July 24th. For this to be the tipping point is so crazy to me. I personally think there's other things going on in the background. But next, Pusha really goes into his relationship with Ye, right? And it actually kind of bookends because there's talk in the beginning of the conversation about Malice actually taking a trip to Wyoming, and when Ye was working on Jesus is King. And so they talk about Malice's, or at least Pusha's apprehension, Pusha warning Malice about going there because he didn't want to get him caught up in all the BS that was going down. And so Malice ended up going, of course, and so we got a Clipse track on Jesus is King. There's also a Clipse track that's on It's Almost Dry, right? So some of the link-ups that took place around that point in time started this article. And then now here we get to Pusha's feelings on Ye, I guess at the time of this conversation took place, so within the past couple of months. Jones wasted no time responding to the song's tease with his own freestyle over the beat, but this was 2 springs ago at this point. Now that the song's being released officially, if Capo has more to say, Pusha isn't sweating it. Nor does he seem particularly impressed by the initial reply. Hey, man, he says with an evil smile, he can do whatever he wants. I feel like that sometimes, too. It's like, hey, man, you got something, hey, do you, dog. You good. You good. One foe who definitely isn't getting any more of Pusha's time at press time, though, Drake. The Six God famously bowed out of their 2018 Memorial Day weekend bout just as it was getting good, when Pusha forever altered the perception of diss tracks by backing his up with forensic evidence like a legal investigator. I mentioned that before in a video here talking about this legal trial. That battle really did, as Frazier described here, alter the perception of diss tracks by backing his up with forensic evidence. You know what I mean? Like that was an extra level. That was another extra level. And now I think a lot of people still really are in the shadow of the impact of that battle when they look at who wins or loses of a rap battle. You know what I'm saying? So that really was significant. That's a great way to phrase it too, Frazier. 1 second plus. Drake infamously let things fizzle out before dropping an album with lines like, "Never a matter of could I or should I, as luck would have it, I've settled into my role as the good guy." Man, that's so long ago. Settled into your role as a good guy? That's what I'm saying, man. This is where we need to have that Professor Sky drop. That is the cognitive dissonance of a gaslighter right there. 1 second applause. But before the events of last spring, Drake has been spending a lot of time on wax, practically begging Pusha to get back in the ring, particularly in 2023 when he made a music video wearing all of the classic Pharrell jewelry pieces that P auctioned off intentionally. Swagless fashion, bragged on Travis Scott's meltdown that he would destroy those grails without a care, and claimed that he could post up in Virginia anytime on his own for All the Dogs album, where he also taunted the rapper going broke amidst a refrain of empty clips. In the years since they battled, Drake has done everything to complicate the good guy image he once gamely upheld. Dogs even samples the Scarface bad guy clip. Yeah, that's true. 1 second plus. Pusha's heard the taunts, and much like when I asked him a similar question 3 years ago, he could not care less. I think after everything that had been done, I don't think there was ever anything subliminal to be said ever again in life. Not only just musically, like, bro, I was actually in Canada. I actually had a show and made it home. So I can't pay attention to none of that. I did the dance for real, not to come back and tiptoe around anything. Frazier asked him, so you would only ever engage again if it went full tilt? Man, I would only engage again if I felt like it. Look at these images. It's been interesting, watching these GQ conversations. I mean, GQ also had one with Pharrell, so we saw a lot of Pharrell looks. I'm pretty sure these are got to be all LV looks if you check this out. Right here. I'm sure they all got to be LV, but I'm not mad at the art direction here. So for the record, bait jobs like buying and wearing Neptune's pieces from the same era that Clipse thrived in aren't going to do the trick. He's always said he was a fan, so I feel like that's something a fan would do. It's like it wasn't like P was hurting for money and sold his jewelry, Pusha says with a dismissive laugh, referring to the chains Drake bought at an auction. Still, however, assured, Pusha feels in his own battles with Drake, I've wondered if it feels bittersweet to him in any way that Kendrick got the full back and forth knockout experience, whereas his was in a way cut short by label interference. This part's actually really interesting. This is a really interesting part right here, so check this out. Label interference, Jay Prince weighing in, and Drake ultimately backing away. Here's what Pusha says. Nah, I feel like everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. I had my own vision and my own intent in everything that I did during that time. And I did everything I wanted to do. There was nothing that I felt slighted about in watching anything last year. It was good to watch. I knew where it was going. I knew how it was going to play out, and it did. Earlier, when discussing Def Jam clutching their pearls over a Clipse Kendrick record, Pusha said it all reminded him too much of 2018. This is the interesting part. Weighing in on Drake's and Kendrick's ongoing feud, namely Drake's decision to sue UMG over releasing Not Like Us, Pusha elaborates on what he meant. I will say this, Pusha shares, admitting he's no bar-approved counselor with intimate knowledge of the suit. If Drake's adamant to have a lawsuit, it's only because he knows all the things they did to suppress everything that was happening around Adidon and the verses and the records and things that were happening back then. We talk a lot about Drake knowing the music industry well enough, knowing how they arguably knowing how they artificially boost different artists through streaming platforms, etc. And I find this really interesting because this is Pusha talking about what they did then, which I don't necessarily hear talked about as much when it comes to the battle between Pusha T and Drake. But Story of Adidon went crazy. And then, if I'm not mistaken, it ran into licensing issues because he sampled Story of OJ. And so I think that kind of curbed its availability at a certain point in time. It's not that he sampled Story of OJ. He rapped over the Story of OJ beat, right? And so that sort of stopped its movement a little bit. We saw the same thing happen with Nicki Minaj and Remy Ma, because she went over the Ether beat for Sheether, I think. So that always stops a diss track dead in its tracks, right? You better off going with original music than you are going with, another artist's song. But that was also part of it, right? And so then you have the Jay Prince stuff that came in, and Kanye using Larry Hoover, who was Jay Prince's big homie, to help quell some issues with Drake at that point in time, I believe. And then them doing that concert together. All of that happened so fast. It wasn't a lot of time between these two things that went together. So, but there was a lot of suppression per Pusha T here from the label side of it when it comes to how that battle actually played out. 1 second applause for that tidbit. He alludes to the instances in which he says label machinations muddled, if not outright nixed, the release of verses in which Pusha talked his ish next to people closely affiliated with Drake, as he did on Rick Ross and Lil Wayne's Maybach Music 6, and posthumously released Pop Smoke's song with Young Thug. I don't rate him no more, Pusha says of Drake's off-whack disses. The suing thing is bigger than some rap-ish. I just don't rate you. Damn, it's like it just kind of cheapens the art of it once we got to have real questions about suing and litigation. Like, what, for this? Exactly. 1 second applause. Pusha once rapped that he's often at the mercy of a game where the codes is missing. As our conversation turned towards beef, disagreements, and conflict, he seemed to want to go out of his way to reject the idea of him being a bully. The way he sees it, every heat check or headshot he's doled out has been the product of him finishing energy that others started. I've really been in Paris making my joints, doing my ish. When these people mention me, they're really going out of their way, Pusha says. What have I done besides wear clothes these past couple of years? That's a good question. I've really just been with LV. This ish ain't coming out of nowhere. Bro, I'd be cool with all these guys. Everybody mentioned today, bro, I promise you, they did the underhanded weird ish. Weird ish that won't let you hear him dedicate any energy to music any time soon. His falling out with Kanye, while they've quite clearly gone their separate ways at this point, Pusha says things are headed there, and the last few months or years of his time with Kanye were him playing the industry game more than anything. I realized at certain points that I was really alone in everything that was going on as far as a rap drama, so on and so forth, Pusha recalls. He points to the 2021 Donda sessions in Atlanta as one of those points. I'm in a collective with a lot of individuals. Everybody's working, but I really got ish to do, and I leave and it's one energy, and then when I come back, the energy's off. And then you hear about the sidebar conversations. You got your homeboy who's coming up to you like, yo, they were saying this when you left. I'm thinking that we all in this collectively getting busy, but in all actuality, everybody had their own agendas. And I feel like I was the only one who didn't. My agenda was for the squad. So from that point on, I just looked at everybody differently, and I looked at it as, we're just going to make music, we're going to get beats, we're going to write some raps, and we're going to keep it moving. At press time, Kanye has burned virtually nearly every bridge and collaborative relationship he's ever had, and Pusha is no exception. It's like, bro, you've been mentioning me, screaming about me, you got every soul believing that I've done such a great injustice to you, and that's a lie. He goes on his rants. The one thing that I can say about him is that he knows that every issue that he's having and crying about right now, I've told him distinctly about those things, distinctly. So when he gets up there and with his KKK mask and he's screaming behind it like a pro wrestler, he got to scream behind a mask. He don't talk to me like he talks to others. It's usually invigorating to hear Pusha talk his ish, but there's something sad about seeing such a prolific partnership end like this. We've made some great ish, bro. We did, Pusha acknowledges. I mean, really, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy to me really is the one that feels like the Pusha T album. That really feels like it's got Pusha's hand all over it, from the way he's rhyming, you know, to word placement, bar placement, particularly that one, away from just the good music stuff. That one, whereas like I listen to College Dropout or Late Registration, those really feel like Rhymefest, Consequence, he's hanging around them, right? 808s really feels like the Kid Cudi album. Yeezus really feels like the Travis Scott album. Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy really feels like the Pusha T album. 1 second plus. But let me tell you something. He's a genius, and his intuition is even more genius level, right? But that's why me and him don't get along, because he sees through my fakeness with him. He knows I don't think he's a man. He knows it. He knows I don't think he's a man. Oh, God. That's that one bar ether right there. That's what makes your soul burn some. Ye's probably ranting right now on Twitter. I'm going to go check it out. But he knows I don't think he's a man. Jesus. He knows it. And that's why we can't build with each other no more. That's why me and him don't click, because he knows what I really, really think of him. He showed me the weakest sides of him, and he knows how I think of weak people. More important to Pusha than the music he made with Kanye is how Kanye handled the financial fruits of that relationship. 5 years ago, after publicly expressing frustration with the predatory nature of label deals in general and the splits on his Def Jam contract in particular, Ye announced that he planned to give 50% ownership stake in the masters of his own good music roster back to the artists themselves. Today, Pusha says Wes kept his word. Wes kept his word. 1 second applause. The greatest thing he did, and why I'm okay with where me and him are right now, and I'm cool with staying that way, is because at the end of the day, my truth is my truth, but I still respect what he did in the business. And he speaks ill about the music we've made and giving me certain records, but the one thing he did give me was all the profits back from the Def Jam deal. 1 second applause. Hey man, you know, if you disagree with somebody, at least you can't say that when it comes to Ye. When it comes to Ye, there's always the question of how much of his erratic behavior can be attributed to the mental health issues he's openly discussed. To what degree can you hold his rants and screeds against him? He's sick, I do believe that much. You're sick, but you are also very calculated. And if I take your sickness and take how calculated you've been and disruptive you've been and tried to be to me, then it cancels itself out. I can't look at it as sick because you're detrimental. You're detrimental to everything. Wow, that's crazy. Industry games, fake politics, fake allegiances, they're all underscore how important it is for Pusha to have his brother back with him navigating shark-infested waters. Bro, listen, that's the biggest comfort and the biggest asset to me, Pusha says, impassioned. You got to understand where I'm from. We build the loyalty amongst friends. Once we lock in as a crew, this is how it goes. We together, and we win together. We lose together. This is how we go. Word up. There's more to the article, not much more, but there's, you know, a few paragraphs left. And I honestly think that this is actually, one, just top to bottom, it's a really great piece. Two, apparently Def Jam and UMG, per this article, didn't want Clipse and Kendrick so much they got rid of Clipse and Pusha T. Crazy to think about. And three, Pusha just doesn't even care. He does not care about Ye and his mental illness. He says he don't care. Ye know he mentally ill and he's still doing his stuff and he's not even remorseful about it, so they're past that point. And also this piece, at least from the section we read, does give another good look at the industry machinations behind Drake versus Pusha T versus Story of Adidon. So there's some stuff in here. There's more meat at the beginning of the article. I'll put a link in the description. I definitely think everyone should give it a read when you get a chance. 1 second applause to Fraser Thorpe. Let me know what you guys think about this, if there's anything that I missed or anything that comes to mind thinking about this article. Do you really think that it was solely, I'm gonna ask you guys, do you guys think solely Pusha T and Kendrick collab that's not even about Drake was enough solely for Def Jam and UMG to get rid of the whole team? Does that sound right to y'all? Let me know in the comments section. My name is Justin Hunt. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow the Company Man on everything. Follow the Justin Hunt podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all happening.
Justin Hunte is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunte is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom happening. Systematical culture views us radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dapping them. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, yes, y'all. You don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunte is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening. Justin Hunte is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening.